My name is Fabian Poulin, and I will be chairing this hearing today. The procedure for this hearing will be as follows. Listed on the agenda appearing on the screen are the applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. Committee members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or in opposition to each of the applications. Today, we will hear oral submissions from interested parties. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each application was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. This declaration must be on file today before we can hear the application. Without it, I may have to adjourn the application or administer an oath if necessary. Can the coordinator confirm that we have received all statutory declarations? Coordinator?
We have received item number 6 and 7 only.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The committee may ask for a brief presentation of the application followed by questions from members and submissions from the public. Please address your comments to the chair, starting with your name and spelling it if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. The committee limits presentations to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the discretion of the chair. Before we begin, we have 2 items of business to address. Does any member present need to declare an interest in any of the applications that are before us today or that are on the agenda of another committee panel?
No. No.
Ms. Chandler? I confirm that she says no. Mr. Lewis? Are you confirming you don't have any conflicts, Mr. Lewis?
No, I'm good.
Thank you. Okay. We don't have any minutes to adopt, so that was the second item. We will now hear the application scheduled for this hearing, and we'll deal firstly with any items that may be adjourned. Is there anyone present or online who wishes to request an adjournment of one of the applications scheduled for this hearing? I believe we have 2 items that are to be adjourned, and I believe Mr. Howard James is representing the applicant. Mr. James, are you there? Madam Coordinator, is Mr. James here? I see his name.
Hello, yes, I'm here. Sorry, having a little
Perfect.
technical trouble here.
Okay. We don't have a statutory declaration for the sign posting that would be on your property, so I need to administer an oath.
Okay, yes.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I do.
Thank you. We can proceed with the application now. There is a request for for both applications, number 2 and number 3 to be adjourned today. Sine die. Are you in agreement with that, sir?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments from staff?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. The department has reviewed the application and is requesting an adjournment at this time so that the applicant can correct the requested variance for the rear yard setback and provide confirmation on the lot width for the retained parcel.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. At this time, I'd like to ask the panel to vote on the adjournment sine die. All in favor, please raise your hands.
Favor.
And Mr. Otto, could you voice whether you agree?
Yes, I'm in favor.
Thank you very much. So it's unanimous. It will be adjourned sine die, Mr. Howard, Mr. James.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, now we will move on to application number 1. Is Mr. Sepowitz available? Mr. Sepowitz, I see him on the screen. Hello.
Hello, just having some technical difficulty here.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, how are you?
Very good, thanks. Since we don't have a statutory declaration on file today for the sign posting, I need to administer an oath to you, sir. Are you available? Do you agree to that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I do.
Thank you. We can now proceed with your application, sir. If you'd like to just give us a brief description of what you'd like to accomplish here today.
Sure. So my application is in regards to bylaw 69. No building or structure, including any part of the sewage system, which does not require plan of subdivision or site plan control approval, shall be closer than 30 meters to the normal high water mark or 50 meters to the top of the bank of any water course. I'd like to apply for a minor variance to switch that to 15 meters to the normal high water mark of any water course or water body, which has been approved by the RVCA, or 50 meters to the top of the bank of any water course or water body. In regards to the highest water mark, an OLS has surveyed it and they have determined that the top of the bank would be the highest water mark. To give a little perspective on the site in particular, so this lot was bought in 2006 when none of these bylaws applied to it. My neighbor currently in the adjacent 32 lot is within 15 meters of the exact same water course, but I'm being impacted and getting pushed back to 30 meters. So I'd like to apply for a minor variance to reduce it to the 15 meters from the highest water mark, which in this case would be the top of the bank.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Walker, do you have any comments on behalf of the city?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The department has reviewed the application and has no concerns with it. Staff is satisfied that the 4 tests are met.
Thank you very much. Any comments from the panel? Mr. Vervoort?
No comments, no questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions, Mr. Lewis? I'm sorry, I did not hear you.
I'm good with it.
Thank you very much. Ms. Chandler, any comments or questions?
No, I don't have any concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Otto, any comments or questions?
No, I'm okay with it.
Great. That being no other further comments or questions, I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. All in favor, please raise your hand. Your application is approved, Mr. Sepowitz.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. And we move on to application number 4. And 4. And I believe the agent on file here is Mr. Scott Irwin. Is Mr. Irwin available? I see him there.
Hi.
Good morning, Mr. Irwin.
Morning.
Since we don't have a statutory declaration for your property, I need to administer an oath. Are you able to do that?
I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I do.
Thank you. Can you please just give us a brief description of what you want to accomplish today?
Yeah, my client would like to expand their front foyer towards the front lot line. So we're looking for relief on the front yard setback.
Okay. Mr. Walker, do you have any comments on behalf of the city?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The department has reviewed the application and has no concerns with it. The sought variance is consistent with the front yard setbacks within the surrounding neighborhood, and staff is satisfied that the 4 tests are met.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. You have any comments of the panel, Mr. Lewis?
No, I'm good with this one.
Okay. Ms. Chandler, any comments or questions?
None.
Thank you. Mr. Otto, any comments or questions? Mr. Otto? Mr. Otto, do you have any comments or questions? Oh, he's dialing in. Mr. Vervoort, do you have any comments or questions?
No comments, questions, or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll wait for Mr. Otto's phone to hook in.
Gotta love technology, eh?
Yeah, exactly. It's just a little bit, well, we're all learning this. It's all a learning curve, right?
Yeah.
So some of us are in the rural parts of Ottawa, so we don't have the benefit of high speed.
I think Mr. Otto is connected now, but he just has to unmute.
Just unmute your self.
I'm on
There
my
you go.
phone.
Perfect. Mr. Otto, do you have any comments or questions or concerns regarding application number 4?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Great. So your application is approved, sir.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Now move on to application number 5. Is Miss Mariani available? I see her there. Need to unmute Miss Mariani. Good morning, Ms. Mariani.
Good morning.
We do not have a statutory declaration for your sign posting. I need to administer an oath. Are you okay with that?
Yes,
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I do.
Thank you. Would you please give us a brief description of what your application is about today?
We are building phase 2 of our Wellings of Stittsville. Phase 1 is already operational. As you can see in the background, we have requested a height variance from 15 meters to 20.4 meters, which is an additional story. And the reason behind that is when we built phase 1, 15 meters was difficult to stay within. And in phase 2, we have proposed a mixed use building rather than having a separate commercial component to the site. So the main floor will be on the front of Hazeldean will be a mixed use commercial. So we'll have, commercial and residential, with residential above the commercial, and which typically needs higher floors for commercial.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Walker, do you have any comments or questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The department has reviewed the application and has no concerns with the requested variance. It is important to note that the request is consistent with the comments received by the city's urban design review panel. Additionally, it's important to note that the site is subject to an active site plan control application. And so staff further requests that if the committee decides to approve the application, that it not be tied to plans, as there might be changes through the site plan control process.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Do you have any comments or questions, panel? Mr. Vervoort?
No comments, questions, or concerns. Thank you.
Ms. Chandler, any comments, questions, or concerns?
None.
Mr. Lewis, any comments,
Nope.
questions?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Otto, any comments or questions?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mariani, I believe you have enough votes to carry you to a successful application. Your
Thank you very
application
much.
is approved. You're welcome.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Now we're moving on to item number 6. And Ms. Krista Lipman. Is Ms. Lipman there?
Hello.
Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Wonderful.
Good.
Nice,
Good to,
nice to see your face again.
yes, good to see you all. It's been about a year.
Yeah, yes, it has.
So yes, I'm the agent for the application at 4836 Bank Street. I've submitted a presentation. Is that up on your screen?
Not yet?
Okay,
Now it is.
here we go. Next slide, please. So this is a series of applications, 2 lot line adjustments and 1 servicing easement to facilitate the development of the properties owned by Leitrim South Holdings, Pathways South, and Home Hardware. We can skip 2 slides, please. So this is just a snippet of the area with a bit of a blow up of the precise area that we're dealing with. So Pathways South and Leitrim South Holdings are companies owned by the Regional Group, and Regional has been developing the Leitrim area together with others for some time. Home Hardware owns the piece in the middle. So blocks, if we look to the inset, part 1 is a lot line adjustment from Home Hardware to the Leitrim South Holdings land to be merged with block 237. Part 2 is a lot line adjustment again from Home Hardware to Leitrim South to be merged with block 238. Those 2 blocks will be developed for residential uses. The third application is to request a servicing easement over part 3 in favor of block 203 on the draft 4M plan, which is owned by Pathways South. The Home Hardware lands are subject of an ongoing site plan control application, proposing mixed use development consisting of 4 buildings on the retained lands. It will be completed in 3 phases with a retail hardware store, a 5-story hotel, a single-story restaurant, and a 2-story mixed-use building with commercial uses at grade and office above. We've reviewed the comments from the city, South Nation Conservation, and Hydro, and note that there are no comments or concerns. We did pre-consult with the councillor, but not really with the community, given the evolving nature of the community. And should the consents be approved, I don't think there will be any visible impact on anyone outside of the landholders of the subject properties. And I will note that further applications will be submitted for a lot line adjustment between block 203 on the draft 4M and block 237, just to square off that parcel for development, as well as access easements between Home Hardware and Pathways South, so that the main access for those developments will be from Bank Street, which is to the right, not from Don Skipper, which is to the top of the parcels. Any questions?
First, I'll ask Mr. Walker to have some comments before that. Mr. Walker, any comments or questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff has reviewed the applications and is satisfied that the requested lot line adjustment and easement are appropriate for the intended use.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Now I'll ask the panel if they have any questions, comments, or concerns. Mr. Otto, any questions or comments or concerns?
I guess the only question I have is, because Bank Street is a major access route, is there going to be another set of traffic lights put in, or is it going to be maintained the way it is now?
Aaron, are you able to answer that? I actually don't know, Mr. Otto, but it is subject to site plan. So I think that would be addressed through that process, but I see that Erin O'Connor has just joined.
Yes, there we go. Hi there. Yes, I just jumping in here. So there are intersection traffic lights that are actually built at Dunskipper and Bank Street already. And there is an entrance into the Home Hardware that we don't represent, but we coordinated with Home Hardware off of Dunskipper as the primary entrance into the commercial lands. The easement that will come forward, or the request for an easement that will come forward later on by Photan Consultants on behalf of Home Hardware and Pathways South. This will be for an access, a right in and a right out on Bank Street. It will not be a full moving access.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions, Mr. Otto?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Ms. Chandler, any comments or questions?
None.
Thank you. Mr. Vervoort, any comments or questions?
No comments or questions.
Mr. Lewis, any comments or questions?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, thank you. I believe we have three consents to vote on today. The first consent I'd like to ask the panel to vote on is B00085, lot line adjustment. All in favor, please raise your hands. That first consent has been approved. Second consent is B0086, another lot line adjustment. All in favor, please raise your hands. The second consent application has been approved. Third is B00087. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Ms. Libben, all three of your consents have been approved.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'll see you on the 22nd.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And last but not least is application number 7. Is Benjamin Clare available?
Yes, I am. Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning, Mr. Clare. Could you give us a brief description of your application today?
Yeah, certainly. I'll walk you through. So good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members, staff, and members of the public. So I am Ben Clare. I'm a professional planner with McIntosh Perry. My office address is 115 Walgreen Road. Attending on behalf of my client, Mr. Andreas Fustanellis. A bit of background on this one. My client approached our office just prior to Christmas last year. At the time, he had partially completed the construction of the enclosed veranda or sunroom at the back of his house, and he had received an order to comply from the building section, which accurately identified that a building permit had not been obtained and that a footing inspection was required as well. Unfortunately, in undertaking this project, my client determined erroneously that the project did not warrant a permit. Before we were involved, again, in his books, it's a small project at the back of his house. My understanding is that the sonotubes existed already. Project was, the structure proposed not far above grade, decided to enclose it. Anyhow, in the end, it's an enclosed deck of sorts. And unfortunately, this determination was incorrect. Here we are today. So this variance, if granted, will enable my client to proceed with the building permit application. So in terms of the variances being proposed, there's two that we're on the hunt for. One is maximum lot coverage, and the other is from the minimum required rear yard setback. I'm going to focus my brief discussion here this morning on the rear yard variance. For lot coverage, just to touch on it briefly, we're seeking a variance of 4.25%. This from the maximum permitted of 25%. There's another property in the vicinity that has on Cassone that has obtained a variance for lot coverage. This didn't generate any concerns with any groups providing comments, including planning. And it's established within the planning brief provided that it meets the general intent of the OP and bylaw. It's minor and is desirable. Of course, happy to take questions on that variance. For the rear yard variances, or the variance rather, the two most critical parts of this variance are the material magnitude of the variance actually being requested, and then impact. So with respect to magnitude, what's required on paper here, what we've applied for is 8.52 meters of relief from the required 12 meters, which sounds pretty hefty. The required rear yard setback of 12 meters seems to have been carried forward from the old City of Nepean zoning bylaw. What's particularly curious about this lot is that the original dwelling, or the dwelling that was built following registration of the subdivision, is only set back not 6.9 meters from the rear lot line. And in discussion with staff over the past couple of months, and after a fairly extensive review of files in the building division, committee of adjustment, and the city's archives, we have to look for zoning bylaw amendments or previous committee decisions. We've surmised that a determination was likely made in the building division when the original or the permit for this particular structure, sort of the dwelling, was granted, that a determination was made by the building division that the original dwelling located on the lands prior to registration, one that's long gone now, had a setback of only about 6 meters. So what we've assumed is that the determination was made that because that setback was less than 12 meters, it would be okay or compliant to proceed with the dwelling where it's located today. And in fact, kind of oddly, that original dwelling is indicated on the actual plan of subdivision, which is at Appendix A of the planning rationale. And it's shown to be about 6 meters from what's now the rear property line. This fact is absent from staff's report, and if it were to be acknowledged, the material variance being requested would reflect 3 or 3.5 meters, as opposed to the 8.52 that's actually being pursued. Somewhat carelessly, in my opinion, and I've discussed this with staff's report instead simply refers to the fact that the setback is in contravention of the bylaw. And I think that context goes a long way, given the irregularity of this situation. With respect to impact, when it comes to an evaluation of whether or not the variance being granted is minor, the key consideration as established by the board and the tribunal is whether or not the granting of relief being requested would give cause to adverse impact. This is explored on page 6 of the planning brief. And my opinion is that there's no impact to any neighbor. In fact, 5 Cassone, 9 Cassone, and St. Monica School to the north. The height of the addition is comparable to that of a fence. Fence is existing on the side lot lines, and the abundant foliage, evergreen hedges at the back of the property, actually makes the addition, which is existing, mostly unfortunately, but for the purposes of establishing impact, it's quite convenient, from the school and from the play area on the school immediately adjacent to the addition. The addition is virtually invisible. And I've got photos within the appendix to the planning brief that prove that. That proves that. It's also worth noting that we've undertaken fairly extensive neighbor consultation in this instance with letters to all abutting landowners at 5 and 9, the school, the community association, and the ward councillor. And to my knowledge, no concerns have been raised. Just with respect to some of the staff comments before I wrap this up, the planning staff's report, and I've discussed this with staff again, refers to nuisance such as noise, impact in relation to character, and impact actually on the subject site in the event that the school is redeveloped. And I'm happy to kind of explore these comments in more depth. I won't take up all of your time, but I actually, excuse me, don't think there's that much substance behind these comments. And I've discussed that with Rashawn, who's in attendance. So in short, I do think that both variances being requested are meet the intent of the OP, the bylaw, are minor and are appropriate for the development of the subject lands.
Thank you, Mr. Clare. Mr. Walker, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The department has reviewed the application. It has some concern. The staff's concern isn't with the requested variance for the lot coverage. We are of the opinion that that variance is consistent with lot coverages in the surrounding area. However, the department concern is with the requested variance for the rear yard setback, mainly because it's not quite consistent with the rear yard setbacks in the surrounding area. And as Mr. Clare mentioned, the as of right zoning for the school to the north allows them to have a interior side yard setback of 7.5 meters. And if that property is to be developed, that it has the potential of increasing the levels of nuisance to the subject site. At this point in time, staff has no further comments.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Does the panel have any comments, questions, or concerns? Mr. Vervoort?
No, I think it meets the 4 tests under the specific circumstances of this case.
Thank you. Ms. Chandler, any comments or questions?
Well, my first concern had been with respect to the neighbors, but given that we've received no comments and Mr. Clare, it's my understanding then from you that basically they are comfortable with what is being proposed to establish it.
We provide them with notification. They would have received city notification as well and haven't expressed concerns. My understanding as well is that they weren't the folks who contacted the city as well initially about the lack of compliance, I guess, or the need for a building permit in the first place. I think that came from an inspector who was in the area on an adjacent property. So my understanding is that there have been no complaints from any neighbors or concerns raised.
Okay, my second question is just because I sort of lost track here, and it's always funny with these structures that are sort of half built, pre-built before they come for an application. What was there before? Like you said, it's essentially the enclosure of a screen and porch. So the roof overhang was already there to that extent?
No, the roof overhang wasn't there. My understanding from talking with my client is that there was some kind of a deck or patio in that area before. So it would have perhaps been considered landscaping. Just with respect to staff's concerns that the variance itself, which is an enclosed veranda, could trigger nuisance or impact in relation to noise. I don't think there's any substance there. I'm just not following that train of thought, with all due respect.
So essentially there was probably a deck on sonotubes, and now they are constructing a roof and enclosing it over the same dimensions essentially.
That's a fair assumption, yeah. I haven't seen the deck that would have been there, and aerial imagery isn't able to confirm that, but that's what I understand from the owner. Long and short for me though is evaluating impact of what's being proposed today, and less so kind of the facts, what was there before.
Yeah, it was just a little bit unusual not to see a photo of the back of the house. There's only the photo of the front. It would have been nice to sort of be able to get a bit of perspective. I don't know if you have additional materials.
Yeah, there is a photo, sorry, through Mr. Chair, on the last page of the planning rationale of the addition. It's within the appendix 3 in the photographs. It shows the structure kind of wrapped in house wrap. And the addition again is not in photo, but depicted on the plans that form part of the appendix as well.
Mr. Clare, I don't have a copy of that. I don't know if you can hold it up if you didn't submit them. So I mean, it doesn't.
I have all that I have in front of me is a black and white.
Oh, okay, and that's the hedge along the back. Okay, that gives me a much better idea of what you're looking at then.
Yeah.
Thank you. Then I don't have any further comments.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Otto, do you have any further comments or questions?
No, I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, any comments or questions?
No comments, no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Walker, I noticed that you came up on the screen. Did you want to make any comments, any further comments to some of Mr. Clare's comments?
No, thank you. Staff does no further comments.
Thank you very much. I feel that the minor variance is fine. It's very close to the school, and the only issue is going to be with the existing owner. And if it gets developed, they'll be recognizing that they're going to have to deal with the closeness of that new structure. So I don't have any issues with it. I believe now that the application has been approved. All in favor, please raise your hands.
Aye.
Your application is approved, Mr. Clare. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Administrator, is there any further issues or comments we need to address today?
I believe that's the end of the agenda for today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.